There we go. Okay, so we have all the underlying networking up and running. All of our individual links can speak with each other's opposite end, as it were. We can get through switches and such. We can get across point-to-point links. we can have HQ router talk with the ISP. We need to probably fix a lot more before we can get other things talking with it, but we're going to go through and set up the rest of these instructions. So we're just going to try to go through them in order. So first is set up LAN connectivity at both HQ and tube. We kind of already did that with the highlighted stuff. So HQ has two LANs completely separate, so VLAN 1, so again, that's part of the highlighted stuff. However, this is the new. This is where the organization wants the most security, so we need to show off the things we've learned, and that would include, even though it's not really great security, MAC address security. Ensure that only up to 3 MAC addresses are allowed on any given port, and that the port shuts down when the limit is exceeded. Have the learned MAC addresses be put in the running config. So we're going to hop over here. Now, one thing the instructions don't really say, but I've said a few times to people as they've been looking like they've been working on it, we're only going to be setting that up on access ports where essentially our clients live. So in this scenario, we do technically have access ports going to the router, but we're not going to install security there. So the instructions say on access ports, but we're really talking about client access. And that's kind of what the curriculum teaches us, and what we've seen on the board as I've taught is this is access level type of security. It is the aggregate point where all those connections come in. So where PC3 connects faster than 0.1, let's install switch port security. All right. Faster than 0.1. So we have seen how to enable the security, but I have told you typically you're going to want to set up your variables first. You're going to want to set up your instructions first, your keywords and arguments and everything. So how do we set this interface up to do 3 learned MAC addresses? Switch port dash security, maximum, and then this is where we would supply a value to feed to maximum. In this case, the instruction said 3. Correct. How do we ensure that this shuts down when it exceeds that number? Ooh, I heard shutdown and restrict. So you would want to make sure you go through and note those. We're going to go with violation shutdown. Now that is the default state, though. Default state for port security, if you do not change anything, is 1 MAC address shutdown violation. So even if you run this, it's not going to show up in your running config because the running config does not typically display default values. But if you run it, you're kind of verifying that it took that command and it is in that state without having to run your show commands and everything, which you're going to do anyway. How do we have this put the learned MAC addresses in the running configuration? It seems like it's probably going to start with that. MAC dash address is a valid part, yeah. Sticky. So here we can either give it static MAC addresses, or we can just say configure sticky learning. And that command tells it to put the learned MAC addresses in the running configuration so that at a later time we can come through and save those to our startup configuration. If we do not have that set, it just puts them kind of in the MAC address table, the port security table rather, and it's a valid MAC address. So we've set up all of our features we want port security to run on, but it does no good until we run what command? Just the plain Jane switch port security, right? I'm not going to run it, but that's what we're going to do, because we're going to see real quick. Do show port dash security. We get nothing. Oh, well, I never ran it, so it's not going to be there. Switch port, port security is then, well, yeah, that's right. I'm so used to us having static access ports. We got to be a static access port, which we're not up here. There, now we can turn it on. So that is one step we missed. Again, I'm just so used to us having static access ports. Our port security is only going to run on static access ports. So that's another requisite before we turn it on, is make it an access port. We'll fix that on the next port. But if we run our show command now, we get, hey, we're running port security on, and it's formatted a little weird, but running on port fastness 01, it'll learn 3 MAC addresses, it's in shutdown violation mode, so on and so forth. We're going to do pretty much the same thing over here, but in this case it's going to be on 024 because it's going to be the one running to the client. Int fastnet 24, switch port mode access, because we know we ought to do that first. Switch port security maximum 3. Again, you don't necessarily need the shutdown violation because that's the default. So we're going to actually see that by not running it, and we're just going to turn on port security here and do show port security. As we see, again, the default variable for that is shutdown. So you can run the command violation shutdown, but you don't have to. And I forgot something. Go figure. Not show. My goodness. Switch port security. MAC address sticky. Yeah, I forgot to turn on the sticky learning. So access port, maximum 3, sticky learning, turn the feature on. Turn the feature on. We just didn't do it quite in that order. Again, not a big deal, especially in this little educational network. Who cares? It, at the end of the day, would all count for points. And that's what you're all here for, right? You all came to collect points. And that section's done, right? That part of your instructions, right here, this is where they want port security. Right, we set up port security, we turned the feature on. When the feature turned on, it told it to learn 3 MAC addresses, and it told them to put in the running config. And again, the shutdown, we did that manually as a command, but it's also the default value where we didn't do it manually. So, but both of the client access ports are running port security correctly. So that part's done. We can move on to, in addition to, HQ router should be using SSH, right? So enable SSH access so that only SSH admin is allowed to remotely manage the router. So HQ router. So we have a host name that is not the default host name. What is the other prerequisite we need before we can create RSA keys?
Line VTY.
Not line VTY. We'll get to there. I'm looking for prerequisites for creating crypto keys. If I run the crypto key command right now, it's going to kick back a notification, error, whatever you want to call it. No, yeah, domain name, IP domain dash name. And this is typically provided to us in labs and everything. It's not provided here, so just use your imagination. So I'm just going to use something. CCNA.test, I think, is a lot of, or CCNA. I don't remember what the labs call for, but something. And then we can crypto key generate crypto key. No, I don't know. Oh, I had TMP backwards. That's why. Generate RSA. What's our SSH version 2 requirement? What is it? 1024 will suffice, but why? Because that is greater than 768, right? So, and again, I think someone answered 1024 because that's all the labs do. That's perfectly fine. We're going to use 1024 here, right? SSH version 2. This is not technically a part of the instructions. I don't think it specifically says version 2, but we're going to go ahead and turn on so that only version 2. Now, we need to set this up so that the username is a SSH admin. So we'll just do that. Username SSH admin. And we can supply a password or a secret. Just because we're in a lab setting here, I'm just going to do a plain text password in case we need to show run or something and see it. Now, I'll finally get to those VTY lines. 0 something, right? Doesn't, I mean, depends upon what lab you're following, but we'll do 0 through 4 for today. So what do we need on the VTY lines? Login. Local. Very good. Login local, telling it to utilize the local username list here instead of just login, which would tell it to use the lines password. We're not going to supply a password here. We're going to just do login local. Most of our labs also typically have us do transport input SSH, so that only SSH is the management network or management protocol, as it were, for us. Right? That should be everything we need. However, if you've learned something about me today, it's that I like to verify, verify, verify. So I'm going to go verify. From one of our clients, I'm going to SSH-L with the username. -L means the next thing is going to be the argument for username. And I'm going to go to one of the router IP addresses I can access, which is going to be 1.254, right? 1.254. So that is working. We can't go much further because we didn't do the full basics. We don't have a privileged password, so it doesn't let us through. But we know SSH is working. We were able to SSH to the device. And if we had a privilege level password and everything, then we could fully manage this device. But SSH-L and then the username you'd like to log in as, and then the target IP address is your command in Windows here. And if SSH is working on that device, it should just ask you for the password, and you'll be supplying the password of the username you supplied. And that is another document highlight. HQ has redundant link connections to ISP. It should utilize static routes so that serial 000 is the primary link and 001 is used as a backup link in case the primary going down. So this is in your curriculum and your labs and everything. This is floating static route stuff. So you can go back to that and reference that. So we're going to do that here on HQ router. HQ router is going to set up so that serial 000 will be our primary link out, and serial 001 will be our backup link out. These will be default routes. So what network and subnet mask am I supplying? Ouch, you guys are killing me. It is not the 13, 14, 15. Those are directly connected, so we should not need static routes for that. It is not that, because we're needing a default route, right? Ah, there we go, right? It should use static routes so that is the primary link and is the backup link. It's not quite spelled out, but those are going to be our default routes. So yes, correct, quad zeros. Quad zeros going out, serial 000 is the primary. So in our floating static route labs, our primary is installed with an administrative distance of what? The default 1. So I'm just going to hit enter. And I'm going to ignore that because it is a point-to-point link. And now we're going to install a backup using serial 001. And in our labs, we always install this with an administrative distance of 10. And that's going to work here too. So I'll just run that command with 10. Right? If I check my routing table, I should now have a static route, default static route, out 0000. If for some reason that interface were to go down, I'm going to test that, verify, 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 see what I've been doing this whole entire time. The backup route gets installed. If my primary comes back, eventually it should get installed. There it goes. It should be coming now. Should get installed. There it is. Once it fully verifies at layer 2 and everything is up and running, it gets reinstalled. So verify, verify, verify. Both routes are there, and the default static route primary is there when it's active, and the default route that was set as the backup is there whenever the primary is down. So highlight that, done. You need to set up the WAN connectivity so that each site can speak with each other. You have been told to use RIP version 2 on your devices to share the various LAN networks between sites. HQ router should not, though, advertise its public IP addressing into RIP version 2 process. So we should not be doing network statements for the 1314 stuff. HQ router should share its default route with other RIP version 2 routers, right? So HQ router is going to participate in RIP version 2, advertising all of its LANs, but not all of this ISP related stuff. However, it's going to inform the other RIP version 2 routers, hey, I am the default route, build towards me. So let's get that done and out of the way. How do we enable RIP version 2? There we go. Lots of router RIPs being told there. Version 2. And we typically are going to pair that with a no auto summary so that it does not auto summarize at those classful boundaries. Now, what network statements should we supply to HQ router? 255.0 will cover the point-to-point links going to the other router, so that will essentially activate RIP on those interfaces, right? We're going to send updates out there. Eventually, once the other routers are up and running, they'll also be doing the same thing. So the two routers on each point-to-point link will quote-unquote see each other's RIP process. That's of no use, though, if they're not carrying information about other networks. So what other network commands might we supply? 00 and 10 in this case, right? So this router will be announcing to the other routers, hey, I'm running RIP, and if you're going to form an adjacency with me, if you're going to be a neighbor with me, you can also install 00 and 10 as things I have. You know, if you see those networks the best through me, that's perfectly fine because I have them. So network 192.168.255.0. Now that is technically the only one we need for both those point-to-point links, even with no auto summary. Auto summary is for classful boundaries in the operational network, right? It's not going to change the network command behavior. So 255.0 is treated as a class C/24, and so it will activate both 0 and 4 networks. So there's nothing stopping you from supplying a 4 because that is a network it has. It's not needed. It's redundant information because it's going to zero that out based on the /24. So we now have that, and we need 00 and 10. So again, one more time, this router is going to send RIP updates out every interface that a network is associated with in the network commands. Right? So RIP updates are now going out all 4 of these interfaces. That's really of no use to anyone down here. So if the instructions call for passive interfaces, they would probably be applied to these gig interfaces. They're not, but that's where a passive interface would come into play. But eventually, when these other two routers are up and running, they'll see HQ routers messages and say, "Oh, we can form neighbor relationships. We can use you as a rip hop or whatever." And those updates will include these networks. So this router will learn about 00 and 10. This router will learn about 00 and 10, right? One thing we're missing, though, from HQ is in the instructions we said HQ router should tell the other routers about it being the default route. What command would allow us to do that? Default dash information originate. Very good. Default dash information originate. This tells this router, while you have, right there, a default route in your routing table, tell the other RIP routers to build their default route towards you, essentially. Maybe not the best definition, but that's the idea. So essentially, this router is going to include in its networks that it's sharing, it's going to include quad 0. When it does a network update out to these routers, it's going to say, I've got 00 and 10/24s, but I also have quad 0. So if you have no better way to a default route, if you have not been informed of a better method of using default route, you can build towards me with RIP, right? So we're going to quit out of that one. We're essentially going to do the same thing for the other two routers now, right? We're going to run RIP version 2, no auto summary. And then we're going to tell it to run RIP on its point-to-point networks, 255, which should very quickly start populating the routing table, right? There we go. As soon as I told it to start learning, start listening, start sending, start a RIP process on that point-to-point link, HQ routers updates were processed and installed in the routing table on this branch router. So this branch router now knows how to get to 00 via its buddy and 10 via its buddy. But its buddy also included a way to get to quad 0. So if it doesn't have a better way, it's going to do that. However, I have not told this branch router to inform its buddies, in this case HQ, about these networks. So HQ still, does not have any information about any 80 dot networks because that branch router has not been told to inform about 80 networks. All right, so that's where network 192.168.80.0 comes into play. And again, just like 255, 80.0 is the only network statement we need because that covers the entirety of the 80.0/24 block, which these are a part of. These are subnetted from that. So the next time RIP updates are sent to HQ, it should include information about 80.0/27, 28, and 29 right there. All we got to do is hop on branch 2 and do a very similar setup. We need to supply it with instructions to run RIP version 2, and we are turning off auto summarization. We know we need a 255 because all of our point-to-point links were subnetted from that block, right? 255.0 something slash, in this case 4 and 8/30s are a part of that. But we also need to supply 74 and 12/24s. So 74.0 and 12.0, dump out, show IP route. Looky there, we've learned about HQ networks, and we've learned about branch 1 networks, and we've been informed of a default route. And verification. Has everybody else learned about 12 and 74? 12 and 74. So branch 2 networks have now been advertised to the world via RIP. And so everybody has that. We can verify that up here with a show IP route, but we could just simply end-to-end connectivity ping 192.168.12.1 is a 12 dot network that should not be reachable until we have a proper default gateway on this PC. Our router has a way to route to that network. In this case, it now does via RIP. And then the return path has to have all this valid information too, right? So we now can get to 12, we can get to 74, we can get to whatever it is in those networks. Here's 80.33. 80.33 is down there in branch 1. So HQ can get all around the place. Our default route should be working. This server should be reachable. This server is 14.15.16.1. We should be able to get there. Ping 14.15.16.1. Now, we've not done this yet, so I bet that server needs to give it a second to ARP. So we may get a couple failures, but there it goes. I believe I turned on, or it's automatically turned on, the web browser, 14.15.16.1. There we go. I can access the web service of that server, right? I just opened up the web browser here, and I requested the web page off of this server, and that was sent back to me. That's because this PC saw that that network is not on its network, not its local network, so it sent it to the default gateway. This router said 14.15.16. Well, I don't have any of that. However, we're going to override that drop behavior routers have because we have a default route out 0000. That got sent to ISP, which we have not configured. We assumed because the instruction said to that this is all working. So it got its way to the server. The server got its way back. The router got that and got that back to us. That whole path works. All right. Should in theory be able to hop around the HQ 14.15.16.1. There it goes. We got it up and running. We can in theory route around problems, right? Default behavior is probably to route up through here. Oh crap. It went down though. But once RIP reconverges, or fast forward, packet tracers, one nice thing. Once RIP reconverges, we get success because that default route rebuilds across here, right? ISP has redundancy. Primary path went down. That's all right. Once everything kind of resyncs and reconverges, in theory, we get success. So we can route around problems. Some of them, anyway. Right? You know, if we were to lose a whole switch, we might have a problem, but and that allows us to mark off RIP. And when everything's all set up, you're able to do stuff and route around. And I did just that right then. I verified all that. I guess technically, you know, if you want to be crazy, you could highlight the whole thing because it's all done. If you were to do all that, maybe not delete the links, but the configuration-wise, do all that and submit that, you could get 100 on this assignment.